Dr. Doreen. I have 3 kids, twins who are 3.5, boy and girl, has autism, and a 23-month-old boy.
Right.
The boy with autism, knock on wood, don't want to jinx him, sleeps through the night. But the other 2 monsters keep waking up. I adore you, the other 2 monsters. Is it safe to give them tranquil sleep? Please, I need my sleep. Bless her.
I wouldn't. You have to be careful with kids under 2 in general. So okay. I wouldn't. The 2-year-old is probably the tough one.
Yeah.
Why don't you contact the company that produces Tranquil Sleep, and they have a physician who will talk to you more about that. Melatonin is something we produce, so it's not a dangerous substance. For a small child, I believe up to 3 milligrams, which is 1 Tranquil Sleep, is okay. That's what it says. When my kids were younger, like 3, 4, I used to give them half if they needed it, and especially it was very helpful when we traveled overseas. So I can't recommend that you do that. I would suggest that you do consult with the physician who actually produced Tranquil Sleep. And see, but let me just say that I have done that with my own children as young as when they were like, let's say 4 or 3 or 4. Okay. So, but below 2 is you got to be kind of cautious with what you're doing.
So contact the manufacturer.
The physician,
Okay.
And I'm glad that you're using it, which means that it probably helps you, and it's
Very good. Absolutely, and I find it wonderful and ironic that it's the child who's on the spectrum who's sleeping through the night.
Who sleeps.
And I love that we're knocking on wood for you for that continues.
Yes.
Okay. So then we had another question that came in. I'm from Fort Myers, Florida, and my son needs speech therapy and an increase in other early intervention services, but I'm told that they do not have enough staff to comply. I also called a company, but they said first availability for a visit would be in February. And I mentioned this on the show yesterday that we would have you talk a little bit about this, because CARD is getting ready to open an office in Florida, but in that area. But in the meantime, I know you're doing remote services there.
Yes, we are. But I also know that, so we're doing remote services, which means that we will assist with supervision and hire staff locally for you so that we can start helping some of the children there. The issue right now is that with Florida, with the lack of funding there, we're trying to help the parents by getting our Medicare approval there, Medicaid approval there, and yesterday I signed some paperwork, which is kind of, I think, the last thing that I have to do. So I think we are there. I would really highly recommend that you contact our expansion or remote services department, and that is John Galley is the director of that department, and he is a spectacular human being who wants to help everyone in any way he can, and he's just a fantastic guy. I'm very, very lucky to have him here at CARD, and I really recommend that you try to email him, j.galley, G-A-L-L-E, j.galle at centerforautism.com, and he can give you some information about where we're at in that process.
Okay, very good. Next question, and again, this was one that I mentioned yesterday that we were going to save for Dr. Granpeesheh today. Hi, and thank you for your awesome show. My son is 4 and recently started scripting a lot during different times, including when we ask him questions he knows how to answer. It's usually scripts from movies and iPad games, including the CARD app, like Put With Same. I said to Emily, he's quoting you, because I don't know if everybody knows, that's Emily's voice, our Emily that we talk to all the time.
Right.
Emily's the one that is in that app. She multitasks.
Yeah.
Anyway, they want to know, can you give me ideas to help him with this? So scripting.
Yeah. It's funny because we were just talking about that yesterday with Ryan Bergstrom, Ryan. So the basic protocol for this is very simple, is to ignore the scripting and to have communication with the child that's more appropriate. So in other words, to converse, but when it turns into scripting, you ignore it. It's hard for parents, and the perception, the way you have to kind of look at it is that the child's trying to interact, but they don't have the appropriate words to interact, and they've learned something memorized from TV, and they try, or from something else, and they just want to. It's so funny. I remember when I was really little, very, very little. This was before I went to school. So I was, I don't know, 2 or 3 or something. There's millions of pictures of me sitting, and I had my own books, notebooks, and I was writing, and the writing was all scribble. But I would just go on. So I would do this for hours. I'd like write scribbles, and there were the whole notebooks full of just scribbles. And I don't remember it, but I've seen pictures of it, and I think I just got a sense of satisfaction because it made me feel all grown up or something, and I was like writing a book, whatever it was. So it's similar in that way. I think our kids are scribbling verbally.
Right.
You know, they're trying to talk, but they can't differentiate because they hear the sound of language, but they don't understand it so well until they maybe repeat it 100 times or something like that. So they're just they don't understand why it doesn't apply to this scenario. So the intervention for this is quite different depending on the level of functioning of your child. So if it's a child who really understands, I would approach it by teaching the child why it's inappropriate to script. If it's a child whose level of comprehension is really not there yet and they're just repeating, then it's considered delayed echolalia. So they're just basically echoing something they heard in a different scenario. And as I said, the intervention is to planned ignoring. You really ignore that, but then you increase when the interactive type of dialogue with the child. And a lot of times you need to actually give the child scripts to replace these scripts. So for instance, you give the child appropriate scripts, which would be like, "Hi, how are you? I'm fine. How are you?" That's a script, and but it's a socially appropriate script, and so you just replace the kind of like dialogue from TV or from one of our apps or something with something more appropriate initially, and then the child kind of understands that there's certain scripts that are okay and others that are not.
Okay, really interesting.
And later on, we always teach our kids also things like thinking versus saying. There's a lot of different interventions for this.
I always am struck too that as a parent of a child on the spectrum that when things come out of sequence for us sometimes our child is doing something as a 4-year-old that if we saw in a 2-year-old we wouldn't panic.
You would be happy.
Right.
Yeah.
But because I always think that because we came to it later, if we're going to learn something, we're going to skip some of the steps that the kids went through it too. And I'm always struck by the fact that we don't really. That there are kids who will just repeat and babble when they're younger, whether it's a script from something or just something, and we don't panic about it. But we tend to, as parents, when it's a little bit later.
Yeah, of course, because it stands out.
Yes.
If you think about the behavior of children in general, doesn't matter, typically developing kids, it's weird. The behavior of children in general is just strange, right? Like they're running around, screaming, poking each other, pushing, throwing stuff, you name it, right? But because they all do it, we know that it's what we did too, and you'll grow out of it, right?
Right.
With our kids, you freak out because you're worried that, oh my God, why is my child doing that? None of the other 4-year-olds are.
Yeah. Well, and I think
That's
you just hit it on the head too when you said we know they're going to grow out of it, and as autism parents, we don't know that.
Yeah, that's
we
the
don't
thing.
know that we're going to get to the next phase.
Right.
We're afraid we're going to get stuck there. Okay. Really good.
And ABA actually helps you set limits for the child so that they do grow out of it.
Yes.
It's sort of like pushing the child out of that delayed age and saying, nope, it's time to stop this and now go on. You got to keep going until your age.
Yes, fascinating. Yeah. Okay, we've got a special education teacher of 3-year-olds. She says, as a special education teacher for 3-year-olds, I would like to know how I could get training or info on ABA that I can use in my classroom, as 8 out of the 12 children I worked with this last year are diagnosed with autism. I would like to work online on my own time. I am in the New Orleans area. And she did include a email address so that we
Bless
could
you.
get back to her.
Bless-
Yes,
bless.
absolutely. Could we clone her?
Oh, I love you,
Because
yeah.
somebody who asks that question, see, this to me, that's a good teacher. A teacher who wants to learn and is interested in learning.
Somebody who's a teacher who has that many children with autism on this in their classroom,
that
who's
too.
watching our show. Bless you.
Yes.
You already are my hero. You know, like good teachers make all the difference. Yes, thank God. Fortunately, we have IBT, Institute for Behavioral Training, and it is ibehavioraltraining.com. And please go on that site. There's a whole section for teachers. Just go in as a teacher and you'll see a ton of modules that will train you on everything and anything you could want. And if you would like consults in addition to that, we can provide that as well. So please contact IBT if you need anything. These modules are really inexpensive, very, very affordable, anywhere from $7 to $12 for a full module. Once you pay for it, you can just watch it on your own time, review material, you'll see videos, you'll see all sorts of stuff in there, and it'll help, I hope.
And not only that, you know, I'm sure that they would love your feedback once you do the training about what kinds of things you want more of, what was helpful, what might have been better.
They're in production. As you know, they're continuously producing new videos. And I would also, if you need face-to-face time, we do have an office in Baton Rouge. So, you know, please feel free to contact our location in Baton Rouge, and we have a very senior supervisor there, Dr. Kat Minch, and she would be able to consult and help you in any way. And you know, your school district should also be willing to fund ongoing workshops and consultations from CARD. We've done that for many years for many districts.
I also want to suggest that she take a look at skills too.
Yeah, absolutely.
As an educator.
You'll enjoy skills, obviously. Because, you know, IBT provides the training, and thank you for bringing that up, Shannon. Skills provides the curriculum and the home, you know, because skills has so much in there. IBT will train you on our techniques, and skills will give you tools, for instance, an assessment that will help you identify the specific areas of deficit for each child. The BIP builder, which will help you, and CIFA together will help you identify the function of any challenging behavior that any of your children show, and how to treat it, how to deal with it. We'll show you all that. Skills, of course, has a massive curriculum where any deficit is linked into the lesson that you need to teach, and these are written also for teachers with IEP goals and so on, so that you can definitely implement them. So once you have the techniques and the how-to from IBT, skills is the what to, and together you can absolutely take care of all of these kids. It's a hard job having that many children at once that you're dealing with, so that's why I'm saying bless you, because I'm not sure I could do it.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. But I do want to say too about, because I'm a former teacher, and about skills, you know, so often a teacher, you know, you get the children at a certain age.
Yes.
And you gain a certain proficiency at teaching skills at that age.
Yes.
And the skills that are appropriate for that age. And frequently you get a child, I call them the Swiss cheese kids, that they come in and they know some things, but they got a hole here and they got a hole here.
Yes.
And you have to teach the curriculum, you know, even at 3, you have a curriculum that you have to teach, but there are holes there. How do you teach around that? And what often happens is that a teacher goes to the teacher at the phase where the hole starts and says, what do you have for me? And it's a really exhaustive process. And in each child, it's individual. What skills does is it helps to catch any child up developmentally wherever they are, including if the child is 2 and they're behind 6 months.
That's right.
So that you can plug that child in and it spits out, here are the things that would be great for this child.
Yeah.
It's really remarkable shortcut that's brilliant.
Yeah, that's absolutely well said. Thank you.
So I would encourage you to take a look at that. And there's even a 14-day free trial that you can examine it, play around with it, and see what it is. There are so many things in skills that to do, whether you're a parent or a teacher or a practitioner, so many different ways. It's as a tool.
Yes.
It's really a tool belt.
Yes, absolutely.
I love it. So, and then right write to us and let us know how you're using the different things and how they're helping you. We love to hear back about that.
Yeah.
We love to get feedback back. Okay, we should take a break. We've gone on quite a while, and I like to give Dr. Granpeesheh a break from time to time so we don't work her into a hole. Anyway, keep your questions coming in. We'll be right back after this message. Welcome back to Ask Dr. Doreen. We're so lucky that we are here with Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh, and she is answering all of our questions in real time. I can't tell you how much I appreciate this.
It's my pleasure.
I get to learn at the feet of the master. This is very exciting to me.
Thank you.
And I get to learn from the questions that you guys write in. So thank you for being a part of this discussion. Want to continue on with some questions. This is an interesting one. Why does the regional center say they don't vendor with card? I'd like to know the answer to that. That's what I was told how many years ago when we went to our first meeting. And don't get me wrong, I love and appreciate the regional center because without them, we wouldn't have gotten the treatment we did. But I had to fight to get card.
I know. I've been vendored with all the regional centers, I think since 93 or 1992 or so. So it's a pretty long time. Was that almost 20 years? Over 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, over 20 years. So it's either because they have new staff who has not been trained well or doesn't know, or it's because they've been told specifically not to recommend you to card. And the reason for that is that card tends to, we're vendored with the regional center, which means we essentially are supposed to be working for them because they're paying us for for your child. And so, but we are also licensed and clinicians and have to be ethical, and I've stood by that from the very first moment that I started receiving vendorization and funding from the regional centers and any other source, insurance as well. There are organizations that feel that if they give you money, you'll do whatever they tell you to do. And that's not the case with us. We're very, very ethical here. And if I find that I want a child to have a certain number of hours because that is the right thing to do, and if I want that treatment to continue for a certain period of time because that's what scientifically is proven, then I will fight for that family and I will tell the family what's appropriate. No amount of money can alter that. So I think those are some of the reasons we tend to be seen as we just have a school district right now who we're in a fight with because they actually slandered us with the school board of education, saying that our program is not quality enough, and we've followed up with this over and over and over, and now we find that it was two reasons. One is that we had legal intervene because the school district owed us over $100,000. So our lawyers got involved. That's one reason. They literally wrote this in their response to us that we don't want legal involvement. And the second was that we don't fade off our kids, which is really interesting because these are adults. They're not kids. The ones that are in treatment with that school district, they're like 16 to 18, 19, and they're older individuals who need continued intervention. And they expect us to kind of exit the field, and we're not going to. They just need to continue to fund for these because, sometimes people don't realize, Julie Cornack said this to me yesterday, and it's such an amazing statement, is that medical necessity definition is the child has to always improve, but sometimes you don't realize that if you stop therapy or reduce therapy, maintaining skills drops.
Yeah.
So maybe the child isn't improving as fast as you want them to, but they're maintaining, which is also extremely important. So anyway, long story short, those are the reasons that people tend to just alter the facts and tell you we're not vendored. We are vendored. It shouldn't be too hard shouldn't be a massive fight anymore. Please tell our admissions department. Okay. Call our 800 number and tell admissions. Alan Ganther, who runs admissions, is a wonderful gentleman, and he will take this information and let me know, and then I will have our lawyers write a nasty letter to the regional center who told you that.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, the truth is that as you said, CARD is a vendor. for the regional center.
And it's hard. I mean, we have to play both sides, and we have to maintain that vendorization as well, because we've been threatened multiple times that they will drop our vendor. That's what happened with the school district. You know, they dropped 8 families. 8 families because we had a lawyer call them up and say, you need to pay your balance. 8 families who are all, of course, now going to do hearing.
Yeah.
Due process hearing.
Unbelievable. So. But, know the truth, stand by the truth. That's what worked for me.
Yes.
The person stood there and said, I wrote card. They said, we don't vendor with card. And I said, yes, you do. I know you do. They said, no, we don't. I said, yes, you do. I know you do. And then she said, well, you'll be on a 2-year waiting list. And I said, that's okay. She said, you have to put something else down. I said, no, I really don't. And I ended up with card. So you just have to stick to your guns and know the truth. And you don't have, as she said, you don't have to expend a lot of energy, but just know the truth, stand in your truth. And
that's very good to know, Shannon.
It'll work out.
And that's the regional center you dealt with is one of my best regional centers because of Dr. Youngbauer being such an amazing person.
He just wasn't there on the day that I was there.
He's just a terrific guy.
He is
and
fabulous.
He really has every positive intention. Sometimes it simply is the care worker or caseworker that you're dealing with is not informed, doesn't know, whatever.
Yeah. But again,
keep with it.
Stick with it. Okay. I love this comment question. My ASD daughter is driving me nuts. She is now telling me that mommy can't wear shirt and pants, that I need to be wearing a dress. She also is verbally insisting that she can only now wear dresses after I bought her a bunch of new shirts. And, you ready for this? I'm thrilled. She says, I may be one of the few moms out there that loves that, but this is what's driving me nuts. And she says, thank you, Dr. Doreen and Card. I'm guessing because the fact that you're having, as an autism mom, what I appreciate is you're standing there having an argument with your daughter about what she's wearing, and that is kind of
cool.
Huge.
It's very cool.
It's huge.
It is cool. I love it. I'm guessing why this is happening also. I'm guessing that she's rule governed, which means someone taught her a rule, or she figured out a rule about what men wear and what women wear. And the rule is that women generally are the only ones who wear dresses, and she took that rule and generalized it incorrectly to mean women only wear dresses. Oh. So, find out if that's the case, and if it is, show her a lot of pictures of women wearing pantsuits and whatever else. And I think with some dialogue you can alter her reasoning with this. But I love the fact that she has an opinion about it and that she's telling you this.
But she's speaking about it. We always talk about, because Temple Grandin is all about kids need to be polite. It's important to be polite. It's important how you present yourself, and that's a very big deal to her. And when we had her mom on the show, I said, did you really instill those values? And she said, here's what's funny about that. It may have come up once. Yeah. And she said, you can ask my other kids, but that's what Temple grabbed onto and thought was important, and it became a lifelong thing. Yeah. But she said, no, we didn't drill manners at all.
That's interesting.
Isn't that interesting? I just found that fascinating. In any case, moving on. Somebody wants to know, just wondering, what is the difference between perseveration and echolalia?
Echolalia is repetitive, stereotypical behavior that involves echoics. So essentially you will hear something and then repeat it, and it will be ongoing, so it'll be repetitive. So for instance, a lot of times when, you don't see so much of this anymore, when in the 80s or so, a lot of kids would have echolalia, and it was, you'd say anything and they would repeat it exactly. So, for instance, I'd say, you'd say, touch my nose, and they'd say, touch my nose. Those types of things. Delayed echolalia is if they heard something, earlier in the day and now they're repeating it. So scripting and so on. Perseveration or perseverative behavior is the continuation of something that you're doing or saying but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're echoing someone else or imitating another sound. You're just persevering or staying on some behavior for too long of a time.
And you can't let it go.
You can't let it go. You can't shift to something else.
Okay. Now, our mom with the daughter who wants mom to wear dresses has written back and says it's a picture thing. She put a smiley face. She says she likes to draw, and with drawings, you differentiate boys and girls because the girls wear dresses.
That's right.
It's true.
And that's exactly what it is. So you can also, there's many other ways you can differentiate boys and girls. So you might want to in drawings. So one is long hair. That's another one. And I would recommend that you teach a lot of these, because otherwise it will become a series of rigid rules. It's important for her to be able to, from photographs, identify different women and men. This is actually a really hard thing. It's very interesting. So long hair is another one. The objects they carry are other things, like purses and so on. The jewelry is another thing. So I would alternate those things so that your daughter, like for instance, will allow a picture of someone who's wearing a pantsuit, but then put earrings on it, for instance, and long hair, and say, is that a girl or a boy? So let her identify. This is called over-selectivity, because you're focusing on one aspect, you're over-selecting. You're looking at a picture which has multiple facets, but your child is over-selecting to just what the item is, the object is wearing, or just what the stimulus is wearing, and that is identifying the whole meaning. That's not correct. So you need to reteach this, so that you need to broaden it and then generalize it. I did my master's on over-selectivity, and I had pictures of parents, and the child would learn mom and dad touching, receptive, and then we took the pictures and modified them very slightly. In those days, you didn't have Photoshop or anything. So you actually had the parents modify, and you took slightly altered pictures. So for instance, dad would put on glasses, or mom would change their hairstyle, that sort of thing. And it was unbelievable, because even though they had learned the exact stimulus, which was dad, just with glasses, they couldn't identify it anymore.
Interesting.
So yeah, when you memorize a visual based on various just small features of the sequence or of the stimulus, you make a lot of errors. Because if that one small section changes, then you think it's a whole new stimulus. And that's what's happening. If the person is not wearing a dress, then you think it's not that stimulus anymore. It's not the woman anymore. It's a man now. Okay. So you need to broaden the stimulus control. You need to say, okay, they could also be wearing pants, but look, has earrings and these features. It's hard. These days, it's harder to teach this than it was 30 years ago.
Well, yeah, because the rules are so much different. And I'm just thinking about it in terms of the social rules that we give our children. If they have any rigidity, it's hard.
Oh, it's absolutely
it's really hard.
I think there are certain things that still remain. Like, for instance, jewelry. Jewelry is really very male or female.
Yeah.
It's very, like, for instance, what are you wearing today? Like, you wouldn't see, you actually would. Maybe in Hawaii or something you would. But I mean, you wouldn't see, for instance, those types. Yeah. So that's very female oriented. That's much more of a thing. Yeah. And, how do we, typically developing, identify those types of things based on all those features?
Yeah.
Physical features, the things that we're wearing, the voice, the sound, all of that, behaviors, because it comes naturally to us to read the body language of a female versus a male. It doesn't to our kids.
We were in a Walmart the other day, and my son saw somebody and said to me, "Mom,
is that a girl or a boy?
Is that a man or a woman?" And my husband and I both stood there and said, "We don't know," and because I couldn't have told you. I really couldn't have told you.
It happens with me more and more now. I can't say.
Yeah. And I said, and sometimes it's not
Doesn't
clear.
matter.
And he's old enough that we could have that discussion and say, is that really important to know?
Yeah.
And define. Right. Now at 5. 5. We needed
Yes.
him to be able to distinguish between, different things at different times.
Yeah.
But incredible.
But the fact that he's actually observing those things and identifying the things that don't quite fit in and asking you about it is cool,
Well, and even a little bit of a discussion
It's
of
what a
that.
typical, it's what a child would do.
Yeah, and he even said to me, that makes me feel a little bit funny that I don't know. And I said, and that's okay.
Yeah.
You're not going to keel over and die from feeling funny,
That's
right?
amazing.
It's
but
perfectly
I mean, he's
okay.
so analytical, he's just identifying so many things. Another child would do the feel. I feel weird when I can't tell. I'm like, I hope I don't, like, how am I?
Right, you don't want to offend anybody. Yeah.
And so we all do, but I wouldn't have even been able to voice and say, oh, it makes me feel a little weird. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's amazing.
Well, and I believe it's the same person writing, I have friends that cross-dress. Would it be confusing for her to bring her around them when they're in dresses?
It would be, it wouldn't, it's funny, it's a great question, because I suppose in some ways cross-dressing would be the extreme of what I was just telling you. It's sort of like women wear the clothing of men, but they're never really referred to as cross-dressing, right? We wear pants, whereas in the 50s you wouldn't really. Women mostly wouldn't wear pants. So I don't think it's confusing. I think it's probably what's going to come around in the next few years. I don't know. It's not common to see men wearing dresses unless you're living in Scotland. Or skirts, so I guess it would be appropriate. I don't think I can't think of why it would be inappropriate to show her that.
Well, and I can tell you that you might judge me as a parent, but years ago when it first came on, RuPaul's Drag Race, I watched it with Jem.
Yes.
And we had a whole discussion about that, and he found it fascinating. And so it added that rule for him that sometimes that happens and that it's okay.
Right.
Exactly. I
it's personal choices.
How great that you have that resource available to you, because not everybody has friends who cross-dress. That's a great thing.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to take another break and we're going to be back with more questions with Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh. Stick with us. Welcome back to Ask Dr. Doreen. We are here with Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh, and she is answering your questions. She's a true expert in the field of autism, and equally important, she's a visionary in the field of autism. So grateful that you're here. I had a very interesting question that somebody wanted to know about. They say, I have noticed that my son is better, makes better eye contact, speaks better, and is clearer when he has a slight fever. Why is that? And is that being studied? I love this question.
Because
there was something that came out yesterday that we were talking about before.
Yeah.
So it is being studied.
Yes, it is.
In a very exciting way.
Yes, and it is. I don't want to say it's common, but I've heard this quite a bit. Like I've seen children this way. Yeah. So I guess what happens during something like a fever is that your body is producing kind of an immune reaction in terms of trying to fight whatever it is that it perceives is endangering it, bacterial, viral, whatever it is. And therefore production of ATP increases, which is sort of what carries energy and so on. So the concept is that if we can reduce the production of ATP temporarily, then maybe our child kind of will do better during that time. I guess in the article that was yesterday, it was by Elizabeth Norton, which is Century-Old Drug Reverses Signs of Autism in Mice. This essentially what they're referring to is removing the shield, I guess, when a fever occurs. It's like this curtains are pulled back and you can see the true functioning of the child, which I really do see a lot of times with our kids. So they are using a medication called Suramin, which I guess was used in the past for African sleeping sickness, and they've now only applied this to kids who were, mice who were given viral infections that mimic autism in terms of behavior, and then therefore they saw an improvement. So they are currently doing this study. I'm not sure how you can, perhaps did they leave an email or? They
did not leave an email.
Yeah, so they are carrying the study, let me see where they're carrying it out. I know that it seems like they're carrying it out in come up with a novel idea. I'm not sure. I don't know where the study is, because we got this. We have information about the research, but we're not sure where exactly it's being carried out. It seems to be in Ohio. But the person who's commenting on it is at UC San Diego, but then there's also someone commenting from Akron Children's Hospital in Ohio.
Okay.
So we're not sure, but it is an awesome study, and perhaps you can read this article called, which is in Translational Psychiatry. If you have access to PubMed or someplace where they can get you the research, that's the article. It's in the journal Translational Psychiatry, Suramin with mice right now.
It's pretty fascinating. So at this point in time, though, the trial has been with mice, but this year they're planning on doing this. I think they're starting right now the first trial with humans. So
yes, and
it's very exciting to see what happens.
Yes, and so now as I'm reading more, it is Dr. Navio who is the one who's doing this, and Robert Navio, Naviaux, and he is at University of California, San Diego.
Okay.
UCSD.
So very close to us.
Yes.
All right. But I find this fascinating. We noticed this with Jem. He gets a slight fever, and of course, as a parent, you never want your child to be sick. And yet there is a luscious window of time when he just starts to get a fever where I can talk to him about anything, and it is amazing.
Lucid, yeah.
It is amazing how crystal clear he is. The eye contact is crazy good. And he uses words and his syntax, which is still, a little bit like somebody who learned English
as a second language. Yeah.
But when he has a slight fever, it's there. You're talking to an intelligent college student.
Yeah, and see, we kind of see these things as being so shocking, yet it happens to us all the time. You think about it, and you and I both know how we change when our hormones change.
Why, yes, right? I do.
Well, we do, and the fact of the matter is, if you're extremely high on progesterone one day, you're going to be pretty lethargic and cloudy. If you're extremely high on estrogen one day, you're going to have, everything's going to kind of upset you pretty fast. So it changes your behavior pretty significantly. I can tell you that my sharpness factor, like my brain and so on, really does actually depend on thyroid. Mm-hmm. I'm hypothyroid, and if I don't take thyroid medication, I am pretty out of it. So it's, our biochemistry clearly affects us in that sense. And when you have a fever, your biochemistry is completely different.
Yeah.
So this is all very important stuff. Absolutely.
Makes sense. So I think Nancy and I are going to be talking about this article a little bit in the next hour as well. So, but great question, and it is being studied with some pretty interesting results.
Yes.
Okay. So another person wants to know, why isn't there one place to go for ABA treatment, OT, speech, biomed counseling for the siblings, etc.? Why aren't there autism centers like there are for cancer?
Yeah, gosh, that's such an amazing way to put it in terms of comparing it to cancer. So we try to provide all of that. It's very, very hard. We had a partnership with a bunch of doctors many years ago, and it just there's a lack of understanding, I suppose, between the ABA world and the medical field still. They don't respect each other enough, I think, and also the ABA field doesn't really respect OT or speech. I get a lot of criticism for supporting the medical field and for supporting speech and OT and so on from the ABA world. We try to provide that at CARD. We have an assessment center, which is all licensed psychologists. We have just recently taken on a fabulous physician who we will be talking about shortly when she starts with us in a month. And so we do have, and she's a developmental pediatrician. And we also have speech pathologists, and we work with a lot of OTs. I would love to hire some good OTs for CARD. It's just very hard to find good OTs. And so I feel that there should be, there are centers like that, but the quality of each one I don't think is as good as it should be. I mean, it's one thing to go to one place and find all the areas of expertise. It's another thing to find really high quality areas of expertise all under one roof. And so we are trying very much to provide that, and I think over the next year or two you'll see a lot more centers occurs like that.
Okay, a thing devoutly to be wished for, right? Okay, question from a viewer. How much time childhood autism will need to be better than before? I think what we're
I'm
getting...
trying to interpret that.
Yeah.
So this parent is asking either how long does treatment take, maybe. Or they're asking how, I don't know, maybe they're asking about the age of the child when they start.
Yeah, that's what I'm not sure about either.
But I would say treatment generally, intensive treatment generally is 3 to 4 years. And that's the bottom line. With a lot of our kids, it goes past that to maybe 5 years or so, and we're talking pretty intensive, like 25 to 40 hours. With adults, it's more focused. So you're not focusing on teaching the individual every possible thing, but you're teaching them the more important things in a very focused intervention. Vocational training or safety training or whatever they might need at that time. So it varies. The length of time doesn't matter. Maybe the other question another interpretation of what you asked could be how long does it take before you see progress? And you should see progress, I would say, within the first 6 months, and it should be very visible. If your child has not changed in 6 months, question your ABA team. Because I have not really had a child who hasn't changed in 6 months, and it has to do with the quality of the program and the hours you're getting.
Okay. I want to go to some of our questions on Facebook. We specifically asked on Facebook if anyone had questions about summer, because we're at the beginning of summer here. Somebody wants to know, why do we seem to have more meltdowns when it's hot or humid?
Not sure. Maybe frustration? I think I probably have more meltdowns just in my family when it's hot. If the air conditioning is not on, just think of it that way.
My mother always used to say, and I have no idea whether it's true, but she said that there was a study done sometime in the 60s or the 70s that said that more murders happen when it's 92 degrees than any other temperature.
Seriously? That's fascinating.
That's what she used to say. And I think she would say that to us when it was 92 degrees and she wanted to kill us. But you know what I mean?
Frustration for sure increases, and then biochemically, I'm not sure. Maybe there are things that are happening in your body chemistry when the temperature is that high. I don't know.
And then another person wants to know, is the excessive light and miserable heat why I feel overwhelmed?
Could be. I mean, these are definitely things that are contributing, perhaps. It could also be that you're just overwhelmed. You have too many things on your plate.
Yeah.
So, it's the same. It's funny that these questions, I think last week or at some point we talked about this issue, which was more our tolerance threshold. And I think that a lot of times kids just have, we also don't realize that. I know, oh my gosh, this is so, I really know this is true of me. My kids, as I said right now, Shannon, are not with me. They're in Europe for 10 days or so. And with their dad. And so I find the first few days when they leave, there's this huge hole in my heart. It's like, what do I even do with myself when I go home? My kids aren't even small. They're older, but it's kind of like, wait, no one's asking me for anything? No, I don't have to worry about dinner for anyone? Like, what, am I not taking anybody anywhere, driving, shopping? What's going on? Like, what do I do with all this time?
Yeah.
So the first 2 nights they were gone, I got massive amounts of work done. But just to keep myself busy because I was sad. But then now I start to realize, oh my gosh, it's like, I am just so used to a crazy overload schedule. And I look at my friends who don't have kids, and they actually, after 5 or 6, they spend time on themselves. Mm-hmm. And as parents, we don't even know how to do that. And we don't know, I personally, I'm a very involved parent. So my time belongs to my kids. If I have any free time, it's theirs. Mm-hmm. You might be the same, and it's like, That is why we don't have time to do things like go work out or go to the spa or whatever else, because we do actually have the time. We just give it to our kids.
Yeah.
And so that level, as a result of that, our threshold for everything changes.
Yeah.
Like, think of how patient and tolerant you are as a parent now versus in your 20s.
Yeah.
Right? There's no way on earth. It's like God just prepares us over time. And so, I just think we don't realize how much we pile on, and then we get overwhelmed, and then we say, why am I overwhelmed?
Yeah. And yet we all have good cause to be. Okay, speaking of overwhelm, a good friend of the show wrote in and said, my son is starting to show his aggressive side. He's 4.5, high functioning, but nonverbal. Therapists have instructed me to ignore the behavior and move on with tasks. You have any idea how hard it is for me as his mom to not address his behavior? I understand he's delayed, but I also understand that my kid is very smart and can be very manipulative and sneaky as well. Mm-hmm. When he shows his aggression, he will immediately turn and look at me. I have ignored it. He goes back and does it again or something different, and again will stop and immediately turn and look at me expecting a reaction. It's like he wants me to tell him to stop or behave or something. I can tell when he's being aggressive because he's overwhelmed and frustrated, and I can tell, like in that situation, where he is doing it for attention. My question is, how should I as a parent handle both situations? When he is aggressive out of frustration, I want to just put my hand on him and tell him to relax and get him to calm down. When he does it for attention, intentionally, I want to scold him in a firmer voice and tell him that the behavior is unacceptable. Just to be clear, what I mean by aggression is what you would see from a 2-year-old throwing a tantrum, kicking feet on the floor, grinding teeth with a little growling, occasionally kicking other people while sitting on the floor, open palm pushing, lunging into people. I want to do what's best for him and feel sometimes torn between the two situations and handling them different ways, which I know is not right. Suggestions. I don't know that it's not right to treat them in different ways.
So this is really good. I love this question, and this will probably... I only have 5 minutes, so
yes.
I need to be quick with this, but this is a very lovely question. I really appreciate this question. So, gosh, yes, it is frustration, obviously. So assume it's frustration. Okay, so assume your child is very frustrated. And they're expressing the frustration to you by hitting and doing all these aggressive behaviors. Is that an okay way to express it? Do you want them to express it that way going forward? That's what I have to ask you.
Right.
Because if you want them to continue to express their frustration to you by aggressing, then go ahead and give it attention. Go ahead and respond to it in any way. If you want the child to not do it that way, then you have to ignore that.
Yes.
But at the same time, obviously, you want your child to express frustration to you in a more appropriate way. So how old is the child? 5, I think?
4.5.
4.5. How would a 4.5-year-old typically express frustration? They would perhaps come up to mom and say, I want this, or, whatever, I'm upset, or something like that. Maybe a little bit raised voice, but they wouldn't be aggressive. Okay, because with a typical child, you wouldn't accept aggression as being okay. Mm-hmm. So my question is, why would you accept it with your child? Why would aggression be okay as a means of communication? It's not appropriate. Find another way to communicate, whether it's iconic, because it's a nonverbal child, when they are upset or want to gain something, frustrated, or want attention. It doesn't matter. They need to communicate it in a different way. It's perfectly fine for them to express their frustration or for them to want attention.
Right.
As long as they ask for it or communicate it in a more appropriate way, which would be, in this case, would be iconic or, sight reading. So you need to have your therapist, you can't just ignore it. Yes, you ignore it, but you replace it. You have to replace it. The child needs an out. If he doesn't have a way to express frustration or desire for attention, they'll keep reverting back to what our basic instincts are, which is aggression. I hit and I grab, and that's it. So he needs to learn a more appropriate way, which means your therapy team should be teaching him either a PEC system or a reading system or an augmentative device system, something where he is able to express his basic needs. That's it.
One of the things that I see as an issue, though, is that because I'm 100% clear that none of us want our kids to aggress at any point, right? That it's not inappropriate, but that we are so ingrained as a race of people that when somebody does something inappropriate, and especially if it's your child and you're the parent, we're supposed to say, don't do that.
Yes,
That's not acceptable. Stop that. And we've been lulled into this idea that that's effective.
Right.
Even though if we tore it down and looked at it, we know that doesn't stop any. The child's banging their foot against the seat, and we say, stop it. Don't do that. Knock it off. Whatever. And all it is a tape that we have running, and it doesn't affect the behavior.
Right.
And I think, what I'm hearing here, and I do this still, that I will say, I think I've got to tell him, I can't just let that behavior go.
Yes.
And yet it doesn't work. That's the thing we need to really know at a cellular level. That doesn't work.
Right, and that's in the case of attention-seeking behavior, because any kind of attention, negative or positive, is attention. And really, oh my gosh, I used to do this with my kids when they were young. They hated it, where they would do some sort of attention-seeking behavior, and I'd get up and leave. And it was torture to them, because it was like, wait a minute, now there's no one actually to even give me attention. Not only did I not get attention, I lost what I had, so, and it would really put them into what I think your child might be going through, which is an extinction burst. An extinction burst is really important to pay attention to, because the behavior gets worse before it gets better. From the perspective of the child, he's kind of thinking, wait a minute, when I tantrumed, or when I aggressed, they used to give me attention. How come they're not anymore? I need to raise the bar and double tantrum. And so the child will do that, and then eventually realize, no, wait, they're not giving me attention. I promise you, if you do this correctly, if you really don't attend to the child when they're misbehaving, and give the child a way to communicate appropriately, this behavior will change.
Absolutely. And the one parting shot that I want to do is that in that moment, because you said, does anybody realize how hard this is for me?
Yes.
And boy, do I, because I still struggle with it. But the only times that I'm successful is when I give myself a replacement behavior for me wanting to teach in that moment verbally.
Yeah,
instead of me saying, don't do that, don't do that. I think a whole bunch of other things. I remember the times that therapists stood there and said, hold out, don't give them the paycheck. I give myself something else to do, sometimes like a water plants, so that I'm just talking to myself instead of going in and going That's
a great idea. That's a great idea. And just so you know, keeping yourself busy with something else is a fabulous idea. And just for parents to know, I'm a psychologist. I've had children for years. I've worked with children for years. I'm a board-certified behavior analyst. And I wanted to kill myself on my third child. Like, let me just tell you, we all get lost. We all get confused. We all get frustrated. I'd sit outside my daughter's room and cry because she knew how to run me. And there was nothing that worked until I stepped away from it and said, wait a minute, I'm not doing the stuff that I should be doing, and however hard it is, I'm going to have to do it. It's hard. It's really hard. When you have to pick up your child and force them to do something, when you have to sit outside and hear the crying, I know it's very, very hard, but the more clean you do it, the faster it's over.
Okay, you're all going to want to kill me, but can I squeeze one more in?
Of course, I'd be happy to.
Okay, very quickly, what would be appropriate for my adult son who needs to have a release that involves yelling swear words? If he can do this for a few minutes, he's usually fine the rest of the day. Have swear time or something like that? Thanks.
Why not? We do all sorts of private events and things when we're in our own room. You just need to make sure that he has something like that he can do it in private, and he can actually find ways to excuse himself and go to his room and do it in a way that's not intrusive on anybody else. Who cares what he does when he's alone? He has every right to do whatever he needs to do, as long as it doesn't exacerbate the time that he's with others.